A veteran breaks down a burning door. Smoke explodes in his face. His German shepherd charges in first, barking through the heat. Inside, a female firefighter lies unconscious, trapped beneath fallen beams. He lifts her in his arms as fire rains around them. Every second counts. Outside, the storm screams. Lightning splits the sky. He could have turned back. Let fate decide. But soldiers don't run from the fire. They walk into it. When she opens her eyes, the first thing she sees isn't the fire. It's the face of the man who saved her. A stranger with scars on his hands, and a story even deeper than hers. Before we discover who she is and why that fire was no accident, tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe God still sends miracles through ordinary people, like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes, faith begins where the flames end. The night fell heavy over the small Montana town, where rain came down in endless silver sheets, hissing against rooftops and drowning the last whispers of traffic. Ethan Briggs had always loved nights like this. Quiet, hidden, honest. Rain was one of the few things that never lied. He sat behind the wheel of his old Ford pickup, the wipers thumping a slow rhythm, Ghost's deep amber eyes glimmering beside him in the dim cabin light. Ghost was a 6-year-old German shepherd, broad-shouldered and thick-furred, his coat a blend of sable and dusk. A retired military K-9, his right ear still bore the faint nick of shrapnel from their last deployment. Loyal to a fault, he rarely barked unless the world demanded it. Tonight he sat alert, tail twitching, nose pressed to the fogged glass. Ethan, 41, carried the quiet gravity of men who had seen too much. His face was sharp, angled jaw, days of stubble, faint lines around eyes that once scanned battlefields. He had the build of someone who didn't need a gym to stay strong, and the silence of someone who'd stopped explaining himself years ago. 5 years out of the Navy, he'd been a medic in a SEAL unit that didn't exist on paper. Afghanistan, Iraq, covert extractions. His life had been a series of missions until the last one ended in smoke, screams, and fire. That was the night he lost more than his brothers in arms. He lost belief. A flash of orange broke through the curtain of rain. Ghost's low growl rumbled like distant thunder. Ethan slowed. Up ahead, beyond the bend, flames licked the dark sky, too large to be a campfire, too wild to be controlled. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling over. The sign read, Willow Creek Fire Station. His pulse quickened. The firehouse was burning. He grabbed his jacket, opened the door, and the storm slapped him full in the face. Ghost leapt down beside him, instantly alert. The heat from the inferno met the cold rain in a clash of steam and chaos. Ethan ran closer, shielding his eyes from the smoke. The front bay door had collapsed, and behind it, twisted silhouettes of fire trucks shimmered in orange glow. Then, a cry. A faint human voice from inside, half drowned by the roar of flames. "Ghost, stay close!" They pushed forward, smoke clawed at their lungs. The interior was a furnace. Through the chaos, he saw her, a woman pinned beneath a steel beam, her fire gear scorched, helmet cracked. She was conscious, barely. Her gloved hand trembled, reaching out. "Hey, I got you!" Ethan shouted. Her name tag, Carter, Lena Carter. Lena was in her early 30s, tall, sinewy, built for endurance. Her copper blonde hair was plastered with soot and rain, streaked across a face both fierce and fragile. Her eyes, gray-green like approaching storms, refused to surrender even as pain twisted her features. She tried to move, failed, and clenched her jaw. "Can't feel my leg," she gasped. Ethan crouched beside her, assessing. The beam pinned, her left thigh, Blood darkened her pants despite the rain. His hands moved by instinct, checking pulse, breathing, orientation. "You've got a crush injury. We need to get this off you before circulation dies." Lena's gaze flicked to his arm, to the tattoo of a trident faded by time. "You military?" "Was," he answered curtly, wedging a metal rod under the beam. "Now just a guy with bad luck." She gave a broken laugh that turned into a cough. "You and me both." Ghost circled, barking sharply toward the rear hall. Ethan turned. Through the haze, another form moved. A smaller dog, a Dalmatian mottled with burns, limping, trying to reach Lena. "Rookie," she whispered. "My partner." Ethan's heart twisted. Even the damn dog refused to quit. "Good boy, stay there," he pried, lifted, his muscles strained, shoulders screaming. The beam shifted an inch, maybe two. Lena bit down a scream. Finally, it gave way just enough. He dragged her free, cradling her head against his shoulder as Ghost blocked flying embers. Outside, the rain hit them like salvation. He laid her on the wet grass, lungs burning, and tore his jacket to create a tourniquet. Ghost stood watch, hackles raised, scanning the empty road. "Your dog, he's trained," Lena rasped, blinking against the rain. "Yeah," Ethan said softly, tightening the bandage. "He used to save soldiers. Now he saves me." She studied him through the haze of pain. "You don't look like a man who needs saving." He didn't answer. Instead, he pressed gauze against the wound. "Keep talking. Tell me something." "What?" "Anything. Just stay awake." She breathed shallowly. "You know what they say about firemen?" He looked up. "No." "We run toward what everyone else runs from." He smiled faintly. "Guess that makes two of us." Behind them, the fire raged, collapsing part of the roof in a thunderous crash. The explosion lit the night for miles. Ghost barked once, loud, defiant, then turned to nudge Lena's shoulder gently with his nose. She managed a weak smile, hand trembling as she reached to touch the dog's head. "Good boy." Ethan's heart pounded, his mind racing through field protocols. Shock was setting in. He had minutes, no more. Rainwater and blood mixed under his hands. "Stay with me, Lena. You're not dying tonight. You hear me?" She gave a faint nod. "You sound sure of that." "I've seen worse," he said, "and I'm not losing another one." In the distance, sirens began to rise, faint but growing, life answering the call. Ethan felt Ghost lean against his leg, wet fur pressed close, steady as stone. For the first time in years, he felt purpose return, not in orders or ranks, but in the heartbeat beneath his hands. When the paramedics arrived, they found Ethan kneeling beside her, soaked, burned, steady as if he'd been there his whole life. Lena Carter survived because of him. Rookie, the Dalmatian, survived because of Ghost. And Ethan Briggs, he didn't just save them. He rediscovered the part of himself he thought the war had buried. As they lifted Lena into the ambulance, her fingers brushed his wrist. His black bracelet had slipped loose, the words barely visible in the flashing lights. "Never leave a fallen." She whispered it under her breath, almost like a prayer. Ethan didn't reply. He just stood there in the rain, Ghost beside him, both staring into the dying flames that once again reminded him. Some fires destroy, but others are sent to rebuild. The hospital hallway smelled faintly of antiseptic and rain-soaked asphalt drifting in from the parking lot. Ethan Briggs sat in the visitor's chair outside room 214, his forearms resting on his knees, his palms raw from burns that still throbbed beneath clean white bandages. Ghost lay beside him, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed but alert to every sound. Stretchers rolling, nurses whispering, the distant beep of monitors. The world inside hospitals always felt too clean for men like him, like the sterility was trying to erase what had been survived. Lena Carter was asleep inside. Doctors said she'd make a full recovery if the leg healed properly. It was a miracle, they said. Her artery was almost severed. Ethan didn't believe in miracles. He believed in timing, training, and ghosts that never left you. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the ache of old scars, faded reminders of a war that ended on paper, not in his head. The door creaked. A woman stepped out. She was in her late 40s, wearing scrubs the color of faded lavender, with streaks of silver hair escaping her bun. Her name tag read Nurse Delilah Morris. Her voice carried the calm authority of someone who had seen everything and still believed in kindness. "She's asking for you, Mr. Briggs," she said, smiling faintly. "And the dog, too, if he's clean." Ethan managed a half grin. "He's cleaner than me." When he entered, the room was dimly lit, rain tapping gently against the window. Lena was awake, propped on pillows, IV lines trailing like fragile vines. Her hair was washed now, tied loosely, her freckles visible under pale skin. She looked less like a firefighter and more like someone fighting herself not to cry. "I thought you'd be gone," she said quietly. "Ghost wouldn't let me," Ethan replied, pulling a chair closer. Ghost sat at his side, tail thumping once, polite as ever. Lena studied the dog. "You named him Ghost?" "Yeah, he used to follow me through hell. Name fits." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Then I owe Ghost my life too." Ethan shrugged. "He's not big on collecting debts." For a while, silence filled the space between them. Lena traced the hospital blanket with her fingers, fidgeting. "They told me about your hands," she said. "You treated me before the paramedics came. The surgeon said whoever stopped the bleeding did it with surgical precision. Military training?" Ethan hesitated, his voice low. "Used to be Navy. SEAL medic. Been out a few years." "What made you leave?" He looked away, eyes fixed on the window where rain distorted the city lights. "I lost someone. My wife. She was a cop. Shot during a drug bust gone wrong. I spent my life saving people I'd never meet, but I couldn't save her. After that, it felt wrong to wear the uniform." Lena's expression softened. "I'm sorry. I know what it's like to lose someone on duty." She paused, her voice turning, fragile. "My brother died in a warehouse fire 3 years ago. I joined the department the month after." Ethan's gaze returned to her, the edges of his eyes softening. "Guess we both kept running into fires hoping to make peace with one." Ghost gave a low groan, resting his head against Lena's bedframe, his eyes glinting with the same empathy no human words could express. She reached out, scratching his fur gently. "How old is he?" 6. He's been with me since my second deployment. Lost some hearing on the right side, but he still thinks he's invincible." "He's beautiful," Lena whispered, her thumb brushing the scar on the dog's ear. "You can tell he trusts you completely." "Sometimes I think he's the only one who still does." Their eyes met briefly, a quiet understanding forming between two people too familiar with chaos. The door opened again. A tall man entered, broad shoulders, clean-shaven, wearing a gray wool coat over his uniform. Captain Howard Reeves, the fire chief, mid-50s, with the weathered look of someone who carried every tragedy of his station on his back. His skin was dark bronze, his hair cut short, his voice deep and deliberate. "Ms. Carter, you scared the hell out of us." he said with a tired grin, though his eyes betrayed worry. Station's half gone, but you're tougher than the bricks that held it up. Lena smiled faintly. I didn't make it out alone. She gestured toward Ethan. Reeves turned, sizing him up. You're the man who ran into the fire? The paramedics said you pulled her out before the roof collapsed. Yeah, Ethan said, standing awkwardly. Just did what anyone would. Not anyone, Reeves said firmly. I've seen firefighters freeze under less heat. You acted like you'd done it 100 times. Ethan didn't respond. Compliments made him uneasy. Ghost wagged his tail, sensing the tension. Reeves noticed the dog and chuckled softly. You too, huh, soldier? Damn fine animal. Better half of the team, Ethan replied. Reeves nodded, then turned to Lena. Rest up. You've got a medal coming once the review's over. Then to Ethan. And you, Mr. Briggs, don't disappear just yet. Folks around here could use someone like you. After he left, the room grew quiet again. Lena broke the silence. You hate that, don't you? What? When people call you a hero. He exhaled slowly. Heroes don't have nightmares about what they didn't do. Outside, thunder rolled across the valley, and the rain began to fade. Lena watched him, the hardness in his features softening just for a moment. You saved me, Ethan. Whether you believe it or not, that matters. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, the weight in his chest lifted just enough to breathe. Ghost nudged his knee as if to say, it's time. Ethan stood, tugging the leash lightly. You get better, Carter. You're tougher than steel. She smiled faintly. Only because people like you still exist. As he left the hospital, the night air carried the scent of wet earth and ashes. Ghost walked beside him, steps silent, steady. Ethan glanced back once at the glowing window of room 214, then down at the dog. We did good tonight, buddy, he murmured. Ghost wagged his tail, and in the reflection of the glass doors, Ethan caught his own face. A soldier who once ran from fire, now walking straight through it again. He didn't realize until he reached his truck that his hands no longer hurt. The burns were healing, slowly, painfully, but healing nonetheless. The morning fog hung low over the pine ridge, a pale curtain drifting through the valley as the sun tried to break through. Ethan Briggs stood outside his small cabin at the forest's edge, splitting logs with rhythmic precision. Every swing of the axe echoed through the damp air, each strike an attempt to drown out the noise inside his head. Ghost lay nearby, chewing on a stick, his fur glistening in the pale light. The scars on Ethan's hands were healing, but the quiet burned more than the fire ever had. He'd built this place himself, a one-room cabin with pine walls, a rusted stove, and a porch that looked out over miles of forest. It was the kind of silence soldiers dream of, but never survive for long. The world outside was alive again. Birds in the branches, the river whispering somewhere below. But inside, everything was still frozen in the moment he'd carried Lena Carter out of the flames. Ghost's ears twitched. A low growl hummed from his throat before Ethan heard the sound himself. A car crunching gravel. Few people came out this far. He wiped his brow, set the axe aside, and reached for his jacket. A dark SUV stopped by the gate. The engine cut off, and a woman stepped out. Lena Carter. She was walking carefully, her left leg still wrapped in a soft brace, dressed in jeans and a tan jacket. The sunlight caught the copper strands in her hair, now cut shorter since the fire, and her eyes, storm gray, carried the kind of determination only people with unfinished business possessed. She leaned slightly on a walking cane, The kind that didn't belong to someone ready to give up, but someone still learning how to stand again. Didn't think you'd find the place, Ethan said, voice rough but not unkind. Lena smiled faintly. You gave the nurse your name. The rest was easy. Small town. People talk. Guess I'll have to move, he muttered, though a corner of his mouth twitched upward. She looked around, taking in the cabin, the stacks of firewood, the hanging dog leash. It suits you. Quiet, stubborn, a little broken, but still standing. He raised an eyebrow. That a compliment or diagnosis? Both. Ghost trotted up to her, tail wagging. He sniffed her leg brace and huffed approvingly before sitting beside her. Lena laughed softly, kneeling with effort to pet him. He remembers. He doesn't forget people who bleed near him, Ethan said, half joking, half true. I brought something, she said, straightening. She opened her bag and handed him a folded newspaper. On the front page, a photo captured the remains of the firehouse, the burnt beams, the wreckage, and beneath it, a headline. Arson suspected in Willow Creek fire. Ethan frowned. Arson? Lena nodded, her voice steady. Investigators found accelerants in the basement. Someone started it intentionally. And the part that collapsed on me, it wasn't random. The support beam had been cut before the fire. Ethan's jaw tightened. Someone wanted you dead. I was close to an investigation, she said quietly. My brother's death wasn't an accident. That warehouse fire 3 years ago? Same chemical signature. I think the same people are behind it. He studied her face. The resolve there was something he recognized too well. You're saying someone killed your brother and tried to finish what they started? Yes, and I need to know who. Ethan crossed his arms. You shouldn't be digging into this alone. You're still healing. Her eyes met his. You think I came here for protection? I think you came here for help, he said, equally calm. The air between them held weight, the kind that came before a choice neither wanted to make. Ghost barked once, sharp, breaking the silence. Ethan sighed. Come inside. The cabin was warm, faintly smelling of coffee and cedar. Lena took a seat by the window while Ethan poured her a mug. She held it with both hands, the steam curling up between them. You live like someone trying not to be found, she said. Habit, he replied. Spent years behind walls, under fire. Hard to unlearn. She smiled slightly. You're good at saving people, but terrible at saving yourself. He leaned against the table. I tried. Didn't work. There was a pause, long and heavy. Then she said softly, Your wife. She was a police officer, right? He nodded. Sarah Briggs. Best thing that ever happened to me. She died chasing a cartel lead. Wrong place, wrong night. Same people who used to fund the wars overseas now run drugs through our streets. He clenched his fists unconsciously. After she died, I walked away from everything. I'm sorry, Lena whispered. Ethan shrugged, though his eyes flickered with something darker. Don't be. She was doing her job. I just didn't realize my war followed her home. For a while, neither spoke. The fire crackled softly in the stove. Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing sunlight glinting on wet leaves. Lena took a deep breath. There's something else, she said. My brother wasn't just a firefighter. He was investigating a smuggling route through construction sites. Chemicals, explosives, stolen medical supplies. The night he died, he left me a message on my old pager. Find the man with the scar on his left hand. Ethan's gaze dropped to his own hand, the faint line crossing the back of his knuckles. I'm not your suspect. I know, she said quickly. But you might know who is. You served overseas. Did you ever hear of someone called Silas Crane? At that name, Ethan froze. Silas Crane, former demolitions expert, dishonorably discharged, disappeared after Afghanistan. Rumors said he joined a private militia, one that sold explosives to whoever paid most. Ethan had treated him once after a roadside bomb nearly took his leg. Crane's last words to him: "We all come home eventually, Doc. Some of us just bring the fire with us." "Yeah," Ethan said finally. "I knew him. And if he's here, things are about to get bad." Lena leaned forward. "Then help me stop him." He stared at her. The determination, the pain, the flicker of something dangerous but pure. "I told you, I don't do missions anymore." "This isn't a mission," she said quietly. "It's justice." Ghost barked again, louder this time, ears pricked toward the forest line. Ethan followed his gaze and saw it too. A black pickup parked just far enough down the road to look ordinary, but too still to be innocent. "Looks like justice found us first," he murmured. Lena turned pale. "You think—" "Yeah." He moved toward the door, reaching instinctively for the gun he hadn't touched in years, hidden beneath his jacket on the coat hook. Ghost growled low, muscles tensing. Ethan glanced back at her. "You're staying behind me. If they wanted to finish the job, they just found your trail." Outside, the forest went silent. The kind of silence that always came before the next fire. And somewhere in that stillness, Ethan Briggs realized this wasn't just about saving someone anymore. It was about facing the fire that had been chasing him all along. The night in the mountains was black and breathless. Clouds hung low, pressing against the trees, muting every sound except the wind threading through pine needles. Ethan Briggs stood at the cabin window, the old rifle resting loosely in his hands, his eyes tracing the outline of a dark truck parked at the edge of the forest road. Ghost crouched near the door, muscles rigid, nose twitching with quiet fury. His tail didn't wag. It pulsed once, twice, then froze. The signal Ethan had learned to trust more than words. Someone was out there, watching. Lena Carter sat at the table, her fingers tight around the mug of coffee gone cold. She'd changed since the fire. Her movements slower, but her stare sharper. The kind of focus people carry when they've looked at death and decided it still owes them answers. She had tied her copper-blonde hair back, though a few strands fell loose, framing a face that no longer looked fragile, just determined. The brace on her leg was off tonight. She'd forced herself to walk without it, stubborn in silence. "You think it's them?" she asked quietly. "Could be local kids," Ethan replied, eyes never leaving the tree line. "Or it could be Crane's men. Either way, they're not here to borrow sugar." Lena tried to smirk, but her voice trembled. "I didn't mean to bring this to your doorstep." He looked at her over his shoulder. "You didn't. It was already coming." Ghost let out a low growl, head turning toward the woods. The growl deepened, soft but vibrating like a live wire. Then the forest answered back, a crunch of boots on wet ground. Two shapes moved between the trees, their flashlights cutting quick arcs through the dark. Ethan flipped the switch by the window, killing the cabin lights. "Down," he whispered. Lena dropped behind the couch, heart hammering. Through the glass, Ethan saw them clearly now. Two men, both armed. The first was tall and lanky, in his 30s, with a patchy beard and a long scar curling down from his temple to his jaw. His name was Ray Dugan, a local mechanic with a bad record. Ethan recognized him from town. The other, younger and broader, had a shaved head and nervous energy that betrayed inexperience. That one, Ethan guessed, was new muscle, probably recruited by Crane's network. They moved toward the porch. Ghost pressed against the door, waiting for Ethan's signal. The veteran's heartbeat slowed. He'd been here before, in darker places. "Stay quiet," he mouthed to Lena. The first knock wasn't a knock at all. It was the sharp slam of a boot. The door shuddered, hinges whining. Ethan stepped to the side, rifle raised but not aimed to kill, yet. The second hit cracked the lock. On the third, the door burst open, and Ghost lunged. The German Shepherd struck Ray full in the chest, teeth flashing in the dim light. The man screamed, stumbling backward into the mud as the dog pinned him, snarling. The younger one fired, wild, panicked. The bullet shattered a lamp, sparks lighting the room for a heartbeat. Ethan moved fast, swinging the rifle butt into the man's forearm, sending the gun skidding across the floor. "Don't," Ethan growled. The man froze, clutching his arm. "You're making mistakes you can't take back." Outside, Ray thrashed under Ghost's weight, mud splattering as he screamed, "Call him off! Call him off!" "Ghost, hold!" Ethan barked. The dog obeyed instantly, teeth still bared but unmoving. Ethan knelt, grabbed Ray's collar and pressed him against the porch rail. "Who sent you?" Ray spat rainwater and blood. "You already know." "Crane." Ray sneered. "He said you'd figure it out." Ethan tightened his grip. "Where is he?" The man's grin faltered, fear creeping in. "You think he's hiding? He's building something. Said the fire was just a message. Said you'd understand when it burns again." Lena had stepped into the doorway, pale but composed. "What is he building?" Ray glanced at her, then laughed, a broken, ugly sound. "You really don't get it, do you? Your brother found his stash. That's why he died. And you? You're next." Ghost growled again, deep and vibrating through the wooden porch. Ethan felt the rage boiling under his ribs, the soldier inside clawing its way out. But he couldn't lose control, not now. He shoved Ray toward the edge. "You tell Crane I'm coming," he said. "And next time, I won't hold the dog." He pushed him off the porch. Ray stumbled to his feet, grabbed the younger man, and bolted into the woods. Their truck engine roared to life moments later, tires spitting gravel as it sped away into the dark. Ethan shut the door, leaning against it, breath ragged. Ghost paced once, then sat by his leg, tail sweeping the floor. Lena's hands trembled as she steadied herself against the table. "He said my brother found something," she whispered. "What could that mean?" Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Crane was a demolition specialist. If he's building something, it's not a campfire." She nodded slowly. "Then we need to find out where." "We?" he repeated. She met his eyes. "You think I'm walking away now?" He sighed, running a hand over Ghost's head. "You're stubborn as hell. I learned from the best." The tension eased just slightly, the corner of her mouth lifting. For a moment, the cabin felt safe again, though both of them knew it was temporary. Ethan crossed to the shelf where an old metal box sat. Inside were his military files, maps, radio codes, photos. Among them, a folded envelope marked Silas Crane, 2014, Kandahar. He opened it. A photograph slid out, 5 men standing beside a convoy, dust swirling behind them. One of them was Crane, younger, gaunt, his left hand wrapped in bandages. Another was Ethan himself. In the background, an emblem painted on a crate, a red triangle with a black flame. Ethan's stomach tightened. "What is it?" Lena asked. He pointed to the mark. That's his calling card. He used it to tag his bombs overseas. Looks like Crane's leaving it again. If we find that symbol, we find him. Ghost barked once, sharp and sudden. Ethan turned. Through the window, he saw a flicker of orange deep in the woods. Fire. A single burning circle glowing against the black. A red triangle carved into the ground, burning. Ethan grabbed his jacket. He's toying with us. Lena stood too, her limp barely visible now. Then let's show him we're not toys. Ghost pressed to their side. The glow of fire reflected in his amber eyes. The three of them stepped out into the wet night, walking toward the symbol smoldering in the trees. The rain had stopped, but the air carried the smell of smoke and gasoline. Somewhere in the darkness, a new war was beginning. The red symbol still burned in the woods long after the rain stopped, its glow pulsing faintly through the fog like a warning heartbeat. Ethan Briggs crouched beside the smoldering earth, his gloved hand hovering over the heat. Ghost sniffed the ground, growling low, tracing invisible scents only he could understand. The forest was silent except for the faint hiss of dying flames. Lena Carter stood behind him, her eyes hard but unsettled, a flashlight trembling in her grip. She had changed her bandage again, though she barely felt the pain now. The fire had burned it out of her. Ethan straightened, his face shadowed beneath the brim of his hood. This was done recently, maybe less than an hour ago. Lena scanned the perimeter. So he's close. He's watching. Her flashlight flickered, then went dark. Ethan's instincts screamed before thought caught up. "Down!" he hissed, pulling her to the ground as a shot cracked through the trees. The bullet slammed into a pine trunk where she'd been standing seconds earlier. Ghost barked, sharp and furious, and charged into the darkness. "Ghost!" Ethan shouted, but the dog was gone, his dark coat blending into the forest like smoke. Another shot followed, then a strangled cry somewhere ahead. Ethan grabbed his rifle, motioning Lena to stay low. "You move when I say." They crept forward through wet brush, the smell of gunpowder mixed with pine resin. When they reached the clearing, Ghost was there, standing over a fallen man. The stranger's leg was bleeding badly where Ghost had bitten him. His face was rough, weathered, with a crooked nose and a mouth twisted into a grimace. He wore tactical gear, cheap black, mismatched, like stolen surplus. His eyes darted from Ghost to Ethan. "Where's Crane?" Ethan demanded, aiming low. The man wheezed, clutching his thigh. "You're too late. He's finishing it." "Finishing what?" The man coughed, his teeth stained with blood. "The ridge. The fuel depot down by the old tracks. He's gonna light it. Said it'll burn long enough to make the news this time." Lena's voice shook. "That depot's right next to town. There's a school less than half a mile away." Ethan cursed under his breath, glancing at Ghost. "We have to move. Now." They left the man where he was. Ethan had seen that look before. He wouldn't make it through the night. Within minutes, they were back at the truck, the engine growling to life. The road wound steeply through the mountain's spine, every turn slick with rain. Ethan's eyes stayed locked ahead, the headlights cutting narrow tunnels through fog. Lena sat beside him, loading spare rounds into the rifle, her hands trembling only slightly. "You ever wonder," she said quietly, "if some people are just born to burn things down?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "Yeah, and some of us are born to stop them." By the time they reached the ridge, the smell of fuel was already in the air, a bitter, metallic stench that carried memory. Ethan parked behind an abandoned truck, engine off. In the valley below, they could see it. The depot, half a dozen rusted tanks lined up like sleeping giants, hoses snaking across the mud. And near them, moving between the shadows, was a figure Ethan recognized even at a distance. Silas Crane. Crane was taller than Ethan remembered, but thinner, like the world had hollowed him out. His hair, once military short, had grown wild, streaked with gray. A jagged scar ran from his temple down his neck, cutting through the grime like a brand. His left hand, burned and twisted, still bore the glove Ethan had wrapped around it years ago in Kandahar. But his eyes were what froze Ethan. Cold, manic, but not aimless. They burned with purpose. Lena whispered, "That's him. That's him." Crane knelt beside one of the tanks, connecting wires, humming softly. He was setting detonators, 6 of them, in sequence. Ethan knew the setup. One mistake, and the valley would vanish in fire. "Stay here," Ethan murmured, stepping out. But Lena caught his arm. "You can't go alone." "I have to. He knows me." Ghost slipped from the truck, low and silent, padding at Ethan's side. The two moved as one, soldier and shadow. When they were close enough, Ethan called out, "Silas." The name stopped him. Crane turned slowly, rain glinting on his face. "Doc Briggs," he said with a cracked smile. "Didn't think you'd still come running when things burned." Ethan lowered his rifle, but didn't drop it. "It doesn't have to end like this." Crane laughed, a raw, hollow sound. "It already ended years ago. You just didn't see the fire. We built it, you and me. Every mission, every lie they sold us. This?" He gestured to the depot. "This is just the last spark. You're gonna kill innocent people." "They're never innocent," Crane snapped. "They feed the same machine. I'm just giving them a mirror." Ethan stepped closer, rain dripping from his jacket. "You're wrong. You lost the war, but you don't get to start another." Crane's hand hovered over the detonator. "You can't stop me," Ghost growled. The sound broke something in the moment, an echo of loyalty that used to belong to both men. For a heartbeat, Crane hesitated. Ethan saw it, the flicker of the soldier he'd once saved. He took it. Ethan lunged, tackling Crane hard into the mud. The detonator flew from his hand, skidding across the ground. Ghost leapt onto Crane's chest, snarling, pinning him as Ethan wrestled for the device. But Crane fought like a man who'd already accepted death. He slammed his elbow into Ethan's ribs, clawing for the wires. The timer on one of the charges began to blink red. "Get back!" Ethan shouted to Lena, who had run down from the truck, limping fast. She stopped, eyes wide. Crane laughed through blood. "You can't save them all, Briggs." "Maybe not," Ethan growled, wrenching the detonator free. "But I can save this one." He slammed the control into the mud, crushing it under his boot. Sparks flew, the red light flickered out. Then silence. Just rain, wind, and Ghost panting heavily. Crane lay still beneath him, chest heaving, his face twisted, more in confusion than pain. "You should have let it burn," he whispered. Ethan looked at him. This man who had once been his brother in arms, now just ashes wearing skin. "I've seen enough fire for a lifetime." Lena limped closer, breathing hard. "Is it over?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, it's over." They dragged Crane to the truck, tying his wrists with rope. He didn't resist. Maybe he'd already surrendered to something deeper. The police arrived hours later, led by Captain Reeves, his uniform soaked, his eyes wide at the scene. He clapped Ethan's shoulder. "You just saved half the county." Ethan shook his head. "We saved each other." As dawn broke, The valley lay quiet again, smoke curling gently above the tanks. Lena stood beside Ethan, Ghost leaning against her leg. She looked at him, eyes soft. "You think people like us ever get peace?" Ethan watched the sunrise turn the smoke gold. "Peace isn't something you find. It's something you build." Ghost barked once, as if agreeing. When they finally left, the ashes behind them glowed faintly in the light, like embers that refused to die. But for the first time in years, Ethan didn't fear the fire. He understood it. Because sometimes miracles aren't born in silence. They're born in the ashes. In the end, Ethan didn't find peace by running from the fire. He found it by walking through it, with faith guiding every step. The miracle wasn't that he stopped a bomb or saved a town. The real miracle was that a broken soldier, a wounded firefighter, and a loyal dog could still believe that light can rise from ashes. Because sometimes God doesn't calm the storm. He walks with us through the smoke. He reminds us that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to keep going when you can't see the way ahead. So if you're watching this tonight, remember, every scar, every loss, every trial you've faced, it can still become someone else's miracle. You just have to keep believing, keep standing, keep the fire of hope alive. Before you go, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that God still works through ordinary people. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And may God bless you and your loved ones, wherever you are tonight.